wet hair behind. I just added oil to the tip, so we'll see in about an hour if I regret that. Tea, grab some tea if you don't have any already, or coffee or juice or an alcoholic beverage of choice. Hopefully getting hydrated actually, but whatever, you do you. This tea, I don't know what it is actually. I bought a giant bag of herbs, like one type of an herb, but I didn't label it. And I think that I bought this for my luteal phase. So I make an infusion overnight and then I'm just drinking. I'm drinking whatever the heck this is. And this is kind of a neat jar. I like this reused jar. I want to talk about slow productivity and a paradigm shift. I'm petting this one right here as we talk. I want to talk about slow productivity and a paradigm shift. A lot of this has been a paradigm shift of sorts, has been brewing under the surface, simmering, and it's funny when we think of these eureka moments that we might have in the creative process, in our life, whatever. There's been so much that's building up to that, and then there's like a tipping point of awareness that can happen. So I've been in the swirl of a paradigm shift for a while now, and it's fitting with the new year. Right now it's the Lunar New Year, and a lot of what stirred this was, it's under this actually, was rereading this book, restarting reading this book. This is like a textbook. This is really dorky that I'm showing you this, but this is what I read for fun. This is The Systems View of Life. I never had it in hardcover, so I read this online as digital PDFs. Oh God. These. Yeah, she's obsessed with those. I never read it in hardcover like this. Just online, just in the full, I had the full PDF and I had excerpts, and then I studied with Fritjof Capra, going chapter by chapter, a few years ago. A number of years ago actually now, pre-2020. And I never had this, and it changes the experience of reading, doesn't it? When you're not looking at a screen, when you can just dwell on what is being shared, and my retention changes, all of that. So I just restarted this and am making my way through in full on my own self-study. And whenever I read about paradigms, and whenever I read about broadly the systems view of life, and thinking systemically, thinking in terms of interrelations and processes, I always have this sensation come over me where I feel so much aliveness, and I feel like my arms are almost, like I feel this luminous energy in my arms almost. And I remember the first time that I was exposed to all of this was during my undergrad. I took a course outside of my major. That course was life-shifting. It gave language for so much of what I was thinking about that I didn't know that I didn't know that this existed. And it was like this coming home to a body of knowledge, a body of wisdom and theory and practice. And maybe you've experienced this in your own life where it's a book, or it's an album, or it's a person or a teacher or a place where once you're exposed to that, it's like so much is coming together, so much, it gives you a model for thinking that you didn't have, but that a part of you, you were already on the track. You just didn't have the language or the awareness of the entire body of that knowledge. And when it's like a place, you know, have you gone to a place before or read a book where it just feels like home, like so many of the elements together, coming together to form the whole, speak to a deep sense of coherence in yourself. So I took this course in undergrad, and it shifted so much of my thinking. I kind of shelved a lot of that because I was doing other stuff in my life, and then revisited specifically Capra's work. She's like getting into stuff. in a library on a sunny morning. I remember that morning. I also found out about, at that time, Nora Bateson. Anyway, okay. I was deep in it again, and then I let it go again. And recently got this book. Wow. I mean, this has been 10 years, about 10 years in that timeline. And I started it from the beginning very gratefully, and it catalyzed what was already brewing in my mind around a shifting of my thinking and my way of being and way of working and way of seeing what I saw and how I orient myself toward the world and engage with the world. So I want to talk about this paradigm shift in a very specific way. I will be writing about this soon. Maybe at the time of sharing this, I've already written about this. I send out letters called Regarding Do letters because I run a creative research studio called Regarding Do. So that's the letters that go with that. And all of that is linked below. But what I want to talk about specifically with this, the way that this has aligned in other ways of my thinking over these last couple months, has been something called slow productivity. I'm not saying that slow productivity, I'm not framing slow productivity as a systems view of life. I'm not putting these in conversation right now. What I'm trying to say is that slow productivity is a demonstration or embodiment of a different paradigm of work. And slow productivity is not my language. This is Cal Newport. He has a book all about slow productivity. And I want to talk about it, just like externalize my thinking, externalize my personal research about this, because it gave me so many ahas, it gave me language, it gave me methods of experimenting with. But also, the thing that I want to name in opening to, in moving toward slow productivity, is that this shift in our approach to something, whether it's the approach to life or to how we share ourselves or to how we dress and adorn ourselves, how we communicate and relate. I mean, whatever it is, how you think about things, this shift takes courage, and there's a growth curve there. It's a process of unlearning. And in that unlearning, everything from anxiety and discomfort can bubble, as well as terror and a fear of things falling apart, a fear of feeling that ungroundedness so deeply, in feeling the instability of transitioning to a different way of being. And so I want to get on here and talk about this a little bit, and hopefully bring this together at different days where I can just touch in and talk about slow productivity. And I'll lay it out. What I recommend is just checking out Cal Newport. You might know his name, you might not, but he's someone to know about. And he's one of these productivity author guys. And I will just say right now that the productivity author dudes I find infuriating in so many ways. And the linearity in which they think and share, and the arrogance sometimes, just gonna say it. And I don't think of that with Cal Newport. I don't, for example, I don't like to, in general, learn from people that take a rational point of view, or that like share from this kind of rational mindedness. That's not what I'm drawn to. And I find that to be the case for Cal Newport, but I'm so about it. I'm so behind what he shares. Like when I say this, for example, he'll be talking about productivity and just be like, it's mathematical. Like what I'm explaining is, you can see it mathematically demonstrated. There's a graph that we can, And anyway, a lot of that's over my head, but I'm drawn to what he shares, one, because it aligns with my values and the way that I want to live into my life even more. And because I not only like to learn from people who share things of value, but I also and drawn to people whose way of thinking I find really compelling. And I find the way that Cal Newport thinks, his thought processes, and how he shares those thought processes to be really fascinating. And so I like learning from him, not only because of the content that he delivers, the teachings that he's honed, but also the orientation of his thinking processes. Even if they don't align with my own, I like learning from him in that way. So I'm just going to do like a rough overview of my understanding of slow productivity. The idea with slow, bring it back. I'm going to talk about the pain points really quick that he articulated that I have been swimming in and knowing it doesn't work. And let me just say this really quick. I've been wanting to get on video. I've been wanting to share. And during the days, I am sprinting. I'm sprinting. Like, I'm not sprinting in the ways that I used to in terms of panic, like productive panic, and how I like over caffeinated and my attention pinging everywhere, but I am still sprinting. And what I mean by that is that in the last 6 weeks, I have facilitated 6 workshops. And in those last 6 weeks, we had the holidays, we had Christmas, I had a loss in my family, I traveled. I have, in addition to facilitating these 6 workshops, also work with private clients in something called creative mentorship. I gave away gifted sessions for the end of the year. And so I was holding those, sending out the letters and filming things. I haven't posted during that time, but accruing this footage of like talking and sharing and filming different things, recording podcast episodes and editing and doing all of the admin and the emails. I'm doing some web design with the client, doing some social media stuff with the client, like so much, too much. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I love what I do. I'm grateful for what I do. I have organized my life and taken so many risks and suffered the loss of choosing to make how I make my living, how I pay for rent and pay for everything, to come from the things that I most love doing, to come from the gifts and the skills that I am in love with growing and participating in. So I'm grateful for all of that. And I have been sprinting for so long. And this sprinting for so long has meant that I have either burnt out many times, or I'm like always teetering on it. Not always, but often teetering on that. And so doing, just for example, 6 workshops in 6 weeks isn't too much because of that number. Like, I can imagine being at different points in my life where I could do 12 in 6 weeks. Like, it doesn't actually matter based off of that. Or other points where doing 3 in 6 weeks would be too much. I have another one in 2 days. A lot of them were new workshops. And so there's deep curriculum design. And that takes time. Like, that's something that has to bake and you have to revisit. It's like, I like to compare things to making a painting. Like, it is on its own timeline and you have to be in constant participation with it, meeting it, but it also, there's like this baking time, there's the rising time, the baking time, all of that. And so for these workshops, all of the curriculum design, all of the marketing of these workshops and follow up. Anyway, it was a lot. It was a lot. And okay, so here's Cal Newport. I'm watching Cal Newport then, because the last year, 9 months, I don't know, I have gotten into digital decluttering. If I'm going all over the place right now with this, I am, and also I'm not. So I trust that you're with me still, if you're with me still. I've been doing digital decluttering, and what that has looked like has been not only organizing things, but getting rid of shit. Like, I have saved so many articles and I have saved so many YouTube videos to watch and podcasts to watch. And I got to this point where, one, I really wanted that organized and clear and not so chaotic. So that has been the last year. But especially in the last couple months, I'm over articles. I'm in a no article phase in my life. I'm sorry if I keep showing my hand. I have a cut there, sorry. I'm over it right now. I want to read books. I have read so many articles and I have so many like backlog saved articles. I'm going to continue to read them, I know that, but I didn't want this pile of like to be read things. It's kind of, maybe you've had this too with articles or tabs where you just have so many tabs. It's like, we gotta close some tabs, and it's gonna hurt a little bit, but we're gonna figure out which tabs we're gonna close. So I, in the last 2 days, have officially cleared out all of the articles on my list, which meant reading a lot. And I also cleared out all of the saved videos that were just in my watch later and not in certain folders, subfolders that I can revisit at other times. I cleared through it. Well, I have one more. I have a James Baldwin that it's like a 30-minute video that I'm going to watch, but I can deal with one thing in the queue, right? And I want to do that this week anyway. So I've been doing this major decluttering as a way of trying to grow some more space in my energy, in my mind, because I'm also holding so much in what the chapter of life that I'm in right now, and as part of that, the phase of work that I'm in and the phase of growth that regarding my business is in. So I had tons of Cal Newport videos saved because I was going on like a savings spree for a while, and I watched one and he started to describe slow productivity. And Cal Newport has been someone that for so long has been singing the gospel of doing less and increasing one's productivity, not so that you can just do more and be working all the time, but so that you can be outside, so that you can bake, so that you can watch movies with your family and read the books that you want to read and like just be a person and not be a productive machine, because we are not that, you know? And so I've always aligned with that. And so I saw the Cal Newport videos and I'm like, all right, buckle up, I'm gonna watch these now. And he started to talk about slow productivity. And in explaining slow productivity, he used some phrases that I'm going to share now, and I'm going to share them as accurately as possible to the ways that he described them. But I'm also sharing from my understanding because I haven't read the book. I've just watched a lot of Cal Newport. So one of the terms that he was using, and this is so helpful. So I'm sharing this with you in case you are relating to anything that I'm saying. I think that most of us are feeling extremely overwhelmed and burnt out and potentially hopeless, just for years. Like, this is not just a seasonal thing. This has to do with the type of work that you do. It has to do with the cost of living of where you live. It has to do with the community that you have, how many people you actually have around. It has to do with loneliness too, ingrained, especially conditioned within family, ideas around success and laziness and all of that, American dream type of stuff if you live in the US. What I'm trying to say is that we know this stuff, and we know it in similar ways where we can build a common language around feeling burnt out, feeling overwhelmed. One could argue that living in the US is traumatic in many ways. One could argue that living in this time period of the war machine doing what it does and ecological collapse is traumatic in so many ways. And so I want to share this like out of a lot of compassion around what so many of us are holding, and that there's shared humanity in that, and there's also really distinct differences in how we experience this, in how we hold our awareness about this, in how we've worked on this or worked through this within ourselves, within community. Anyway, I'm just talking a lot. I just sit down and do this, and then I'm just like, so some of the phrases that he said. There's chronic overload. Does that feel right in your body, this chronic overload? Maybe it's work, and maybe it's just overstimulation in lots of different ways. Cal Newport talks about something called an overhead spiral, when there's too many things, in his words, that you've committed to and the overhead is unmanageable, it's too much. And he says that everything on your plate brings a certain amount of overhead. And so we can enter into something called overhead spiral, where you're working on the thing instead of working within it, basically. I have been caught in overhead spiral, for example, with doing these 6 workshops in 6 weeks, because each workshop comes with a certain amount of overhead. And I'm just one gal, like I don't have a team. I'm just doing this as me. And so overhead spiral and chronic overload are both really useful phrases, I think, to check in with yourself about. And he also spoke of the relentless pace, this constant, in his words, constant pressure on execution. Do you feel that? Do you feel that too, this relentless pace? And from what I remember, so much of what he credits that to is the laptop, is the email on the phone. Building a business to working from home is part of this relentless pace, but building a business to this like stereotype of entrepreneurs working from the moment they wake up until the moment they go to sleep isn't that far off from a lot of us. And it isn't that far off for other people that don't work for themselves, but maybe they work for a startup, or maybe they have a role where there are actually many roles that have been consolidated into their one role and their one salary, and it's just grinding. And after a point, it seems necessary, or like there's so much evidence for why it is necessary. And even if one realizes like, okay, maybe this isn't necessary, maybe there's a different way. This is what I was speaking to earlier. Transforming into that new way, opening to that new way, releasing is sometimes terrifying. And if we've been outpacing our bodies, well, what catches up with us once we slow down? Probably a lot of anger, a lot of grief, a lot of sleep, maybe. There can be a fear, I'm speaking for myself right now, of like slowing down means potentially falling into a pit of depression. And then what? If you feel your burnout fully, well, then what? Like, what do? You know, that it can seem or feel safer to just keep on grinding on. And then we have this outer evidence that justifies that, and we see other people doing it, and so on and on and on. Okay, so relentless pace. And here's what Cal Newport said, is that you feel like you're doing all you can by being busy all the time, and you get a psychological payoff. I wrote playoff. You get a psychological payoff that at least I'm not slacking off. And he kind of like called us out there in a way of saying exhaustion is the metric. Do you also use exhaustion as your metric? I do. I have for so long. And that's really hard to shake. Yeah. And then he goes on to say that it's an awful way of measuring effectiveness. It gets in the way of effectiveness. Busyness is getting in the way. It's not the way, you know. And that there's a feedback loop. This is what was reminding me about studying paradigms as well, where when we're talking about feedback loops, there's a feedback loop that starts where the harder that I work, the more unproductive I become. And there's graphs that show this. Like, look into his stuff. But anyway, the harder I work, the more I stack on, the more I sprint, the more unproductive I become. I'm in an overhead spiral. I'm teetering on burnout, or I'm in burnout, and I'm just like trying to, sorry to use mechanical terms according to the body, but trying to like rev up and drive on an empty tank. You know, I feel like it's weird comparing the body to a car, but you get what I mean in this point. So the harder I work, the more unproductive I become. And when there's always too much on my plate, these are my own notes, I'm always behind. I'm always overwhelmed. I'm always in decision fatigue. I'm never doing enough. It starts to kick up that fear of I'm never doing enough. And from there, I turn up the gear. I double down on busyness. I got to just focus on this strategy more. I just got to push through. I just got to do this thing. Oh, maybe this thing will work. Okay, let me try that. But I know I have to do this stuff now. And there's the overhead spiral happening too in the relentless pace. And in doing so, in doubling down, in revving up for more busyness, I also turn up the inefficiency and exhaustion. And round it goes. What he proposes is something called slow productivity that I'm going to be baking into my days. And I mean, I'll just say this right now, even just sitting down and talking like this is one way in which I'm practicing slow productivity, because I'm integrating what I'm learning. I'm taking the breakthrough in my thinking, in my awareness, and I'm giving that time to really sink into my days and into my body, and holding enough space where I can catch my objections. Like, oh yeah, but that easy for you to say da da da, or well, that won't work for me because da da da, or no, I can't take anything off my list, or I can't, or this works for me because of these ways. So this is just sitting down and talking about it. A great thing to do is also sitting down to write about all of this. If you don't write, if you want to write, I teach people how to grow a writing practice, especially a personal writing practice, one where we can call it journaling, one where you externalize your thinking, and there's information about that below. But what Cal Newport proposes as this model of slow productivity is 1, do fewer things, 2, work at a natural pace, and 3, obsess over quality. And I need to wrap this up soon because I've been talking for a while, but something that I just want to name that I am putting into practice today, something that I've intended to do. And sometimes we need, let me just say this, sometimes we need to learn the same thing over and over and over for it to click. Sometimes we need to set the goal and work on the same goal or the same habit over and over and over, and beyond the function of shame that can, or self-judgment that can load up when we're doing that. Why isn't this working for me? Why can't I do this, or whatever? How is this pattern still happening? When we can let that be there, but also see beyond that, this is sometimes what happens, is we need to practice and loop back to and revisit an idea and a practice so many times until it starts to sink in. And then we have these moments when we look back to last month, to 6 months ago, to a year ago, whatever it is, a few years ago, and you're like, oh yeah, that thing that I was struggling with, that I just couldn't figure out, I couldn't move beyond, I don't have that anymore. That's not part of my reality anymore. Something shifted. And it shifts slowly over time, and it also shifts in leaps. And so if you are in your own life revisiting something, revisiting a goal, a habit, a new way of thinking or being, just be easy on yourself about that revisiting practice. That's actually, I think, how it goes. That's what I found. The more that we can see beyond the inner dialogue around what that means about ourselves or our ability or whatever, the more creativity and workability is there for us to meet that thing afresh. So, for example, time blocking, blocking your tasks, or is it task batching? I have no idea. It's like a similar thing, kind of. Anyway, I've tried this so many times and do it sometimes, but I'm going to be doing that today in terms of studying for my creative mentorship clients. I'm always doing continuing education in that. I'm always reviewing our notes and going a level deeper. So what I'm doing today is I'm focusing on, or at least the first half of today, is focusing on nurturing creative mentorship and the current clients I have, and my capacity to hold and magnetize more aligned, dreamy clients that I know that I can support. And so that I can support them so fully and fiercely in them stepping into their power, and them stepping into their life and their creative engagement with life more fully. So I'll be doing that. So do fewer things. That's one of the top priorities. I'm going to be doing that. Working at a natural pace. One part of this that has to do with the time blocking and time batching that clicked for me is when Cal Newport said, proposed to consolidate all of your work during certain times. I think he calls it a meta productivity structure. Consolidating all your work so that you're all in, and there's plenty of studies that show why this works. And then you're all off. So you increase your relaxation in his teachings. You increase this being time, this not being a productive human doer, but just being a human being, and increasing that by having this time where you're all off. And that might be kind of blurry between the different areas, especially if your work is something that you love. It can be easy to overwork in it. This is what I fall into. And so like a great distinction for me is being all off means not looking at the screen. Being all in terms of, hello, IRL, here we are in the universe. We're on this spinning planet. I want to be here for it. I want to open to the wind and the bird song, and prioritize time with friends, and prioritize making meals and tasting my food and all of this, the pleasures of life, and getting curious about them, right? So consolidating work all in, and then increasing relaxation, being off, having time where you're off. And something that he's talked about a long time ago was a shutdown ritual. So anyway, that's the, yeah. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching this. And I'm going to, one of the things I love to do is work in containers. So 40 minutes is like the sweet spot. So I'm going to right now set a container and dive deep into creative mentorship, which makes my heart feel so alive, and then take a break, get some sun because it's sunny today, and that is a gift in the winter time. And I'm going to continue to drink my mystery herb luteal tea. I drink so much more when I have a straw. I don't know if that's the case for you. It's not hot, by the way. Yeah. If what I shared is sparking thoughts in your mind, and you have a hunch that you might benefit from us working together one-on-one, then just check out the links below. There's information that you can fill out, and we can have a conversation about that to make sure that it aligns with my scope, and getting really clear on what you're looking to create in your life at this time and how I might be able to support you in that. Okay, take care. Until next time. Bye-bye.